The Velthari Empire had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. No one remembered a time before them. They controlled 300 star systems and kept dozens of alien species under their power. Their word was law. Their ships were everywhere. And their armada of 90,000 warships made sure that no one ever thought about fighting back. High Admiral Zorath sat in his command chair aboard the warship Crushing Tide and looked at the reports coming from the border stations. Something strange had happened near the Outer Reach, a quiet region of space at the edge of Imperial territory. The sensors had detected unknown vessels entering Velthari space. Unknown vessels. The word seemed almost funny to Zorath. The Empire knew every species in the galaxy. They had conquered most of them. The idea that someone could build ships without the Empire knowing seemed impossible. But the sensor data was clear. 47 vessels of unknown design were moving through the Outer Reach. They did not match any known species. Their hulls were blocky and covered in strange angular plating. They moved in tight formation, clearly military ships, but their technology signatures were completely unfamiliar. Zorath contacted the Imperial Intelligence Bureau for information. They had none. No records of these ships. No records of the species that built them. Nothing. This annoyed Zorath. He was a High Admiral of the Velthari Empire. He had crushed rebellions and burned planets. He did not like surprises. He ordered a subjugation force to intercept the unknown vessels. 2,000 warships, a standard response to any potential threat. It was far more than necessary for 47 primitive ships, but Zorath believed in sending a clear message. The galaxy belonged to the Velthari. Anyone who entered their space without permission would learn this lesson quickly. The subjugation force, commanded by Admiral Nethys, reached the Outer Reach within 3 days. They found the unknown vessels holding position near an asteroid field. As if waiting, Admiral Nethys opened a communication channel. The translation systems took several minutes to decode the alien language, but eventually they succeeded. The aliens called themselves humans. From a planet called Earth, they represented something called the United Terran Coalition. The human leader appeared on the view screen. She was a female with short brown hair and steady eyes. She identified herself as Captain Katie Morrison of the vessel Defiance. Captain Morrison spoke calmly. She said the human fleet was on an exploration mission. They meant no harm. They wished to establish peaceful contact and open diplomatic relations between their people and the Velthari Empire. Admiral Nethys listened to this request and felt nothing but contempt. The Velthari did not make deals with lesser species. They did not negotiate. They conquered. He gave the humans one chance to surrender. They would be taken as subjects of the Empire. Their ships would be claimed as Imperial property. Their world would be added to the list of controlled territories. This was the only offer they would receive. Captain Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke again. She said she was sorry to hear that. She had hoped for a different answer. She asked Admiral Nethys to reconsider. Nethys cut the communication and ordered his fleet to attack. 2,000 Velthari warships opened fire on 47 human vessels. It should have been over in seconds. The humans should have been destroyed before they could even react. But something went wrong. The human ships moved. They moved faster than anything Nethys had ever seen. They scattered in all directions, dodging the first wave of weapons fire with impossible precision. Then they fired back. Human weapons were different. They did not fire the plasma bolts or energy beams that the Velthari used. Instead, they launched things. Physical projectiles that moved at incredible speeds. Missiles that seemed to think for themselves, changing direction to chase their targets. The first Velthari warship exploded 3 seconds after the battle began. Admiral Nethys watched in shock as his ship started dying. The humans were everywhere, moving through his formation like water through sand. They were smaller than his vessels, but they were so fast. His gunners could not track them. His shields could not stop their weapons. One human destroyer, a ship perhaps 1/10 the size of a Vulturi cruiser, destroyed 6 Imperial vessels in less than a minute. It danced through weapons fire that should have torn it apart. Its hull seemed to absorb energy in ways that made no sense. Net HYS ordered a retreat. His captains tried to obey, but the humans did not let them run. They pursued, cutting off escape routes, destroying any ship that tried to flee. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, 1,800 Vulturi warships were gone, destroyed, burning wreckage spreading across the void. The remaining 200 ships were damaged and running, their crews desperate to escape. The humans had lost 3 vessels. Admiral Nethys, aboard one of the fleeing ships, could not understand what had happened. 2,000 warships against 47, and they had been destroyed. It was impossible. It went against everything he knew about war and power. Captain Morrison transmitted one final message before the humans withdrew. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. She said they had come in peace. They had offered friendship, but the Vulturi had chosen violence. The humans would not forget this. They would not forgive it. She told Nethys to return to his emperor. Tell him what happened here. Tell him that the humans were not afraid. Tell him that if the Vulturi wanted war, they would find one. Then the human ships turned and disappeared into the darkness of space, leaving nothing behind but wreckage and survivors. Admiral Nethys returned to the imperial capital 3 weeks later. He stood before Emperor Valeth in the great throne room and delivered his report. He told the truth, even though it shamed him. 2,000 ships destroyed, 1,800 casualties, an enemy that fought like nothing they had ever encountered. Emperor Valeth listened in silence. When Nethys finished, the emperor asked only one question. How? How could 47 primitive vessels destroy nearly 2,000 Vulturi warships? Nethys had no good answer. The human weapons operated on principles the Vulturi had never seen. Their shields worked differently. Their engines allowed movements that should have torn their ships apart. Their tactics were aggressive and unpredictable. Emperor Valeth dismissed Nethys and sat alone in his throne room, thinking. For the first time in his long reign, he felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. But fear made him angry, and anger made him dangerous. He would not wait for these humans to come to him. He would find their world. He would gather every ship, every soldier, every weapon the Empire possessed, and he would burn Earth from existence before these humans could threaten the Empire again. The order went out that night. Total mobilization. Every fleet recalled. Every shipyard working at full capacity. The Vulturi Empire was going to war. 6 months passed. The Vulturi Empire had never moved so fast. Every shipyard worked day and night. Every military base prepared for deployment. Every soldier received orders to report for duty. Emperor Valeth watched the preparations from his palace on the capital world. He had made this campaign his personal mission. The humans had embarrassed his empire. They had killed his soldiers. They had challenged his power. He would make them pay for every single death. Intelligence agents worked to track the human fleet's path back to its origin. It took time, but eventually they found it. Earth lay in an unremarkable star system on the outer arm of the galaxy, a region the Vulturi had never bothered to explore. Why would they? There was nothing of value there. Just empty space and dead rocks. Long-range observation revealed what the analysts expected. A single inhabited planet orbited by a modest space station. A small collection of orbital defense platforms circled the world. There were some ships, but not many. Perhaps a few dozen at most. the analysts delivered their conclusion to Emperor Valith. The humans had committed almost their entire military force to that initial incursion into Velthury space. The 47 ships that Admiral Methes had encountered represented most of what they had. This made sense to Valith. The humans were clearly a young species, only recently developed enough to build starships. They had gotten lucky in that first battle. They had used surprise and unfamiliar technology to win against a force that underestimated them. But luck would not save them when the full might of the Empire came for them. Valith gathered his war council and presented his plan. They would assemble the largest fleet in galactic history. Every available warship would join the armada. They would travel to Earth and destroy it completely. Not just defeat the humans. Destroy them. Burn their world. Kill every single one of them. Make an example that would echo through the galaxy for the next 12,000 years. The War Council agreed. Some of them thought it was excessive. 85,000 warships to destroy one small planet seemed like using a hammer to kill an insect. But no one argued with the Emperor. Not after what had happened at the Outer Reach. The gathering took time. Ships came from across the Empire. From border stations and patrol routes. From conquered worlds and secure territories. The Velthury pulled their forces from everywhere, leaving only skeleton crews to maintain order in their absence. This worried some of the admirals. If they took everything, what would stop the conquered species from rebelling? What would protect the trade routes and the colonies? Emperor Valith dismissed these concerns. The campaign would be quick. They would travel to Earth, destroy the humans, and return before anyone could cause trouble. Besides, the conquered species had been beaten down for so long that they had forgotten how to fight. They would not dare to rise up after 6 months of preparation. The fleet gathered at the staging point in the Kara system. 85,000 warships formed up in perfect formation. The sight was magnificent. Battleships and cruisers and destroyers stretching across the void as far as sensors could detect. The greatest military force ever assembled in recorded history. Grand Admiral Methes, given a chance to redeem himself after the disaster at the Outer Reach, commanded the armada. Emperor Valith would travel with the fleet aboard his personal flagship, the Eternal Dominion, the largest and most powerful vessel in the Velthury Navy. Before departure, the Emperor addressed his forces through a broadcast that reached every ship. His voice filled command bridges across the armada. He spoke of duty and honor. He spoke of the insult the humans had delivered to the Empire. He spoke of vengeance and justice. This campaign would secure Velthury dominance for another 12,000 years. The humans would serve as an example to any species that might dream of resistance. The soldiers cheered. The captains saluted. The armada prepared to move. 20 billion soldiers waited aboard transport ships, ready for planetary invasion. If any humans survived the initial bombardment, ground forces would land and finish the job. Valith wanted this to be complete, thorough. He wanted nothing left of Earth but ashes and memory. The fleet entered hyperspace. The journey would take 3 weeks through the fastest lanes available. 3 weeks of travel, and then the destruction of humanity. Grand Admiral Methes spent the journey reviewing everything they knew about human technology. The weapons, the shields, the engines. He studied recordings from the battle at the Outer Reach, watching his ships die over and over, trying to understand how the humans had fought. They were aggressive. That much was clear. They did not defend and hold position like most species. They attacked constantly, always moving, always pressing forward. Their ships were fast, and their weapons were accurate. They seemed to know exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage. But 85,000 ships was different from 2,000. The humans might be fast, but they could not dodge fire from all directions at once. They might hit hard, but they could not destroy so many vessels before being overwhelmed. Numbers would decide this battle.net. HYs tried to believe this. He told himself the math was simple. Even if each human ship could kill 10 Veltri vessels before dying, the Empire would still win. They had the numbers. They had the power. Victory was certain. But late at night, when he was alone in his quarters, doubt crept in. The humans had surprised him once. What if they surprised him again? The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the human system. Stars appeared on view screens across the armada. A yellow sun, rocky inner planets, gas giants in the outer system. And there, third from the sun, a small blue and green world. Earth. Grand Admiral Nethys ordered a full sensor sweep before advancing. Standard procedure. Know your enemy before you engage. The fleet held position while scanning systems analyzed everything they could detect. The results came back. Nethys looked at them. He looked again. He ran the scans a second time, then a third. Something was wrong. There were orbital defenses around Earth. Yes, but far more than the initial observations had suggested. Thousands of platforms surrounded the planet. Dozens of space stations hung in orbit. And in the void between Earth and its single moon, a fleet waited. Not 47 ships. Not 100. Not even 1,000. Grand Admiral Nethys felt his blood run cold as he counted the contacts. He had faced hundreds of battles. He had commanded fleets across the galaxy. He had never felt fear like this. 12,000 human warships held position in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed in the sunlight. Their weapons were powered and ready. And even as he watched, more ships were launching from the planet below. More ships rising to join the fleet. More ships coming from the moon, from the outer planets, from bases hidden throughout the system. The humans had not sent their entire military to the outer reach. They had sent a scouting party. Grand Admiral Nethys opened a communication channel to the Eternal Dominion with shaking hands. Emperor Valeth appeared on the screen, looking impatient and annoyed. Net HYs tried to keep his voice steady. He failed. Your Majesty, he said. There has been a miscalculation. Emperor Valeth stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion and stared at the tactical display. His face showed no expression, but his hands were gripping the railing so hard that his knuckles had turned white. 12,000 ships. The number kept repeating in his mind. 12,000 human warships arranged in perfect formation, waiting for his armada. And more were still launching. Every minute brought new contacts on the sensors. New ships rising from the planet. New vessels emerging from hidden bases. This was not possible. His intelligence had been clear. The humans were a young species with limited resources. They should not have been able to build a fleet this size. They should not have been able to hide it from Veltri observation. Grand Admiral Nethys appeared on the communication screen, his face pale. He reported what the sensors were telling them. The humans had not just built warships. They had built industry. Massive shipyards orbited Earth and its moon. Factory stations floated in the asteroid belt. The entire system was one giant war machine. How long? Valeth asked. How long had they been building? The analysts did not know for certain, Nethys replied. But based on the production rates they were observing, the humans appeared to be constructing approximately 40 new warships per day. Valeth felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Not just fear. Something deeper. Something that made his chest tight and his mind race. The humans had been preparing for this. They had been preparing for years, maybe decades. The encounter at the outer reach had not started their preparations. It had simply shown them that the enemy they expected had finally arrived. On the other side of the battlefield, Admiral Daniel Cooper stood on the bridge of the carrier Independence. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair at his temples and calm brown eyes that had seen many things. He watched the Velthari Armada on his tactical display and felt no fear. Only sadness. This could have gone differently. The humans had hoped for peaceful contact with the galaxy. They had hoped to find friends among the stars. Instead, they had found an empire that answered diplomacy with weapons fire. Commander Ryan Torres stood beside him, studying the enemy formation. The Velthari had arranged themselves in a standard offensive pattern. They expected the humans to defend. They expected a siege of Earth, a slow crushing of the planetary defenses. They did not understand human war doctrine. Lieutenant, Commander Amy Sheffield looked up from her console. "All fleet elements reported ready," she said. The defensive grid was active. The orbital platforms were fully charged. Every ship was in position and waiting for orders. Cooper nodded slowly. He had trained for this moment his entire career. Every officer in the fleet had. They knew what was coming. They knew what they had to do. He ordered a communication channel open to the Velthari flagship. Emperor Valeth appeared on the screen. He looked older than Cooper had expected, tired, but there was still arrogance in his eyes. Still the belief that he would win despite what his sensors were telling him. Cooper introduced himself as Admiral Daniel Cooper of the United Terran Coalition Defense Force. He spoke calmly and clearly. The Velthari had entered human space with hostile intent. The destruction of the subjugation force at the outer reach had been a defensive action. But this invasion was different. This was an act of war. He offered one opportunity for peace. Take the fleet and leave. Do not return. The humans had no desire to conquer anyone. They simply wanted to be left alone. Veleth's response was exactly what Cooper expected. The Emperor's pride would not let him back down. Not in front of his officers. Not after committing the entire empire to this campaign. He demanded surrender. He promised mercy if the humans submitted. He threatened destruction if they resisted. Cooper sighed. He had known this would happen. The Velthari had ruled through force for 12,000 years. They did not understand any other way. He told the Emperor that he was sorry. Sorry that they could not find another path. Sorry for what was about to happen. Then he terminated the connection and turned to his bridge crew. "All ships," he said. "Weapons free. Execute Battle Plan Omega. The human fleet surged forward. This was the part that confused the Velthari most. They had expected defense. They had expected the humans to sit behind their orbital weapons and wait for attack. Instead, 12,000 warships accelerated directly at the Imperial Armada. They were fast. Faster than anything the Velthari had ever faced. They covered the distance between the fleets in minutes, not hours. And they did not attack as one mass. They split into dozens of strike groups, each one hitting a different part of the Velthari formation. Grand Admiral Nethys tried to coordinate a response. He sent orders to his captains. Form defensive clusters. Concentrate fire. Support each other. But something was wrong with the communication systems. Static filled the channels. Orders were garbled or lost completely. Human electronic warfare was disrupting everything. The first wave of missiles hit the Velthari right flank. Hundreds of ships exploded in seconds. The formation started to crumble. Captain Katie Morrison, the same officer who had led the squadron at the outer reach, now commanded a full battle group. Her ship, the Defiance, led the assault on the Velthari center. She gave orders with a steady voice, directing her vessels with precision. Hit the command ships, she told her captains. Blind them. Cut off their heads and the body will fall. The Velthari flagship was deep in the formation, protected by layers of warships. But the humans did not try to reach it directly. They attacked the ships around it. They destroyed the communication relays and sensor platforms. They isolated the Eternal Dominion from the rest of the fleet. Emperor Valith watched the battle unfold and felt his world collapsing. His ships were dying by the thousands. His admirals could not coordinate. His grand strategy was meaningless against an enemy that moved like water through stone. He ordered every ship to fire at will. Forget formation. Forget coordination. Just kill the humans. But the humans were hard to kill. They never stayed still. They attacked and moved, always from different angles, always targeting weak points. A Valkyrie battleship might fire 100 shots and hit nothing, while a single human destroyer could destroy 6 Imperial vessels before anyone could react. On the planet below, Secretary of Defense Laura Chun monitored the battle from the Global Command Center. She sat in a room filled with screens and officers, watching thousands of ship icons move across displays that covered entire walls. General Nathan Brooks stood beside her, coordinating the ground-based support systems. Orbital weapons platforms were providing cover fire. Ground-based railguns were launching projectiles into space to support the fleet. Chun asked about casualties. Brooks checked the reports. 412 vessels lost so far. 17,000 personnel. Every number was a tragedy. Every lost ship meant families destroyed, lives ended, futures erased. Chun felt the weight of each one, but the alternative was worse. The alternative was extinction. How many Valkyrie ships destroyed? She asked. Brooks studied the data. Over 40,000, he said. And the number was climbing fast. The enemy formation was breaking apart. Clusters of ships were trying to flee. Others were fighting alone, cut off from their allies. The humans were winning, but winning was not enough. If the Valkyrie escaped, they would return. They would rebuild. They would come back with even more ships, even more soldiers. Chun made her decision. She told Brooks to have Admiral Cooper begin Phase 2. No withdrawal. No escape. They would end this today. The order went out across the fleet. Phase 2. Complete destruction of the enemy force. The human ships spread out, forming a net around the Valkyrie armada. Escape routes closed. Jump points were blocked. Any ship trying to flee was hunted down and destroyed. Emperor Valith received reports of the encirclement and finally understood. He was not going to win this battle. He was not going to escape it. He had brought the entire military might of the Valkyrie Empire to Earth, and it was being destroyed before his eyes. The humans were not just defending their world. They were ending his empire. The battle had been going for 3 hours. The Valkyrie armada was breaking apart. Grand Admiral Nethi stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the disaster unfold on his tactical display. Red icons were disappearing everywhere. Each one was a ship. Each one was thousands of Valkyrie sailors dying in the cold darkness of space. He had lost count of the dead. 40,000 ships gone. Maybe more. The numbers did not seem real anymore. Nothing about this battle seemed real. The humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. They did not care about formations or traditional tactics. They moved constantly, attacking from every direction at once. Their weapons were devastating. Their ships were fast. Their coordination was perfect, even without the communication systems the Valkyrie relied on. A human destroyer wing hit his right flank. 8 small ships tore through a formation of 50 Valkyrie cruisers in less than a minute. They moved so fast that the targeting systems could not track them. They hit engines and ammunition storage with surgical precision. Ships exploded in chains as internal fires reached weapons magazines. Captain Scott Henderson led the destroyer wing from his ship, the Relentless. He was a young officer, only 32 years old, but he had trained for war his entire adult life. Every pilot, every gunner, every engineer in his squadron knew exactly what to do. They had practiced these maneuvers thousands of times in simulators. Now they executed them perfectly. Henderson watched a Valkyrie dreadnought turning to face his ships. It was massive, perhaps 10 times the size of his destroyer. Its weapons could probably destroy the Relentless with a single hit, but it was slow. Too slow. Henderson ordered evasive pattern Delta. His ships scattered in 8 directions, then curved back together on the far side of the dreadnought. They fired as they passed, hitting the massive vessel's engine section. The dreadnought shuddered and stopped. Dead in space, a second pass destroyed its weapons. A third pass cracked its hull. Henderson did not waste missiles on the killing blow. He let the ship die slowly as his squadron moved to the next target. This was human doctrine. Speed and precision over raw power. Hit the enemy before they can hit you. Never stand still. Never give them a clean shot. Make them fear you. Emperor Valeth watched the dreadnought die on his view screen. It was the unstoppable Fury, one of the greatest ships in the Imperial fleet. 12,000 crew members. Enough firepower to burn a continent. Destroyed by 8 vessels so small they barely registered on sensors. He turned to his advisors. They had no advice. They had no explanations. They stood in silence, watching their empire die. On the bridge of the Independence, Admiral Cooper received updates from his fleet commanders. The Valkyrie formation had completely collapsed. Enemy ships were scattered across the system, fighting alone or in small groups. Many were trying to flee. Most were not making it. Commander Torres reported that the escape routes were sealed. Human ships had moved into blocking positions around the system's jump points. Any Valkyrie vessel that tried to reach hyperspace was intercepted and destroyed. Cooper did not take pleasure in this. He understood what was happening. Thousands of aliens were dying, most of them just soldiers following orders. They had families somewhere. Children who would grow up without parents. This was the reality of war. This was what humanity had prepared for, even as they hoped it would never come. But the Valkyrie had made their choice. They had attacked at the outer reach without provocation. They had gathered their entire military and come to Earth with the intention of wiping out humanity. Mercy would have been suicide. Lieutenant Commander Sheffield reported that the enemy flagship had been located. The Eternal Dominion was deep in the chaos, protected by a shrinking cluster of loyal warships. It was moving toward the edge of the system, trying to reach a jump point. Cooper considered his options. Destroying the flagship would be satisfying, but capturing the Emperor would be more valuable. A prisoner could negotiate. A prisoner could order surrender. A prisoner could help end this war with fewer deaths. He ordered a capture operation. Send the best Marine units. Board the Eternal Dominion. Take the Emperor alive if possible. The Marine assault carrier, Swift Justice, moved toward the Valkyrie flagship with an escort of destroyers. On board, Major Lisa Garrett prepared her teams for boarding action. They had trained for this. Every Marine in the coalition forces practiced ship-to-ship combat regularly. They knew how to breach hulls. They knew how to fight in the tight corridors of enemy vessels. Garrett gathered her squad leaders for final briefing. The Eternal Dominion was the largest ship in the Valkyrie fleet. It would have thousands of defenders. The Marines would be outnumbered badly, but they had advantages. Better armor, better weapons, better training. And the Valkyrie had never faced ground combat against humans before. They did not know what was coming. The Swift Justice closed the distance to the flagship. Valkyrie escorts tried to intercept, but the human destroyers cut them apart. Boarding pods launched from the assault carrier, screaming across the void toward the Eternal Dominion. Garrett was in the first pod. She felt the impact as they hit the enemy hull. Cutting lasers burned through the armor plating. The pod's assault door blasted open, and she led her Marines into the ship. The Valkyrie defenders were waiting. They opened fire immediately, energy weapons filling the corridor with deadly light. But the Marines were already moving, spreading into cover positions, returning fire with kinetic rifles that punched through Velthury armor like paper. The fighting was brutal. Every corridor was a battleground. Every intersection became a kill zone. But the Marines pushed forward, room by room, deck by deck, cutting through the defenders with relentless efficiency. Garrett lost contact with 2 of her teams. Casualties mounted, but they kept advancing. The Eternal Dominion was dying around them. Secondary explosions shook the ship. Lights flickered and failed. Smoke filled the passages. After 2 hours of fighting, Garrett and her surviving Marines reached the bridge. The doors were sealed. Garrett ordered breaching charges placed. The explosion ripped the doors from their frames, and the Marines poured through. Emperor Valeth sat alone on his throne. The bridge crew was gone. Dead or fled? Garrett did not know. Only the Emperor remained, sitting in his command chair, staring at nothing. He did not resist when the Marines surrounded him. He did not speak when Garrett approached. She told him he was a prisoner of the United Terran Coalition. He would be treated according to the laws of war. He would not be harmed if he cooperated. Valeth finally looked at her. His eyes were empty. The arrogance was gone. The pride was gone. Everything that had made him an emperor had been burned away by the destruction of his fleet. He asked one question. How many of my ships are left? Garrett checked her communication device. She received the latest reports from the fleet command. Fewer than 9,000, she told him. Most of those have surrendered. Valeth closed his eyes. 85,000 ships. The entire military power of an empire that had ruled for 12,000 years. Gone in a single day, Garrett led him away in restraints. The battle was not over yet, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Velthury Empire had fallen. The battle ended 6 hours after it began. The void around Earth was filled with wreckage. Broken ships drifted through space, their hulls torn open, their lights dark. Debris fields stretched for thousands of kilometers. Escape pods floated among the ruins, carrying survivors who had managed to abandon their vessels before the end. Of the 85,000 Velthury warships that had entered the human system, fewer than 9,000 remained. Most of those had surrendered rather than face destruction. Their crews sat in silence on their bridges, waiting for human ships to arrive and take them prisoner. Admiral Cooper ordered recovery operations. Every escape pod would be collected. Every survivor would be rescued. The humans had fought hard, but they were not cruel. The war was over, and mercy could begin. Emperor Valeth was transferred from the Eternal Dominion to a secure facility on Earth's moon. He was given a private room, medical care, and food. He was treated as a prisoner of war, not a criminal. This surprised him. He had expected torture. He had expected humiliation. He had expected humans to treat him the way the Velthury treated their prisoners. Admiral Cooper came to see him 3 days after the battle. The human officer sat across from Valeth in a small meeting room. Guards stood outside, but they were not needed. Valeth had no fight left in him. Cooper asked if he was being treated well. Valeth said yes. Cooper asked if he needed anything. Valeth said no. Then Valeth asked a question that had been burning in his mind since his capture. How? How could you build such a fleet without us knowing? Cooper considered the question before answering. He spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. Your empire controlled 300 systems, he said. You kept dozens of species under your power. You were spread across the galaxy, maintaining order through fear and force. That took enormous resources. Ships patrolling borders, soldiers guarding planets, administrators running governments. He paused. We controlled one system, Earth, one planet and its colonies. But we have been united for almost 2 centuries. Every resource, every mind, every effort focused on a single goal: ensuring our survival. Valeth shook his head. But our scouts observed your world. They reported minimal defenses. A small space station. A few orbital platforms. Cooper nodded. They saw what we wanted them to see. The shipyards are hidden in the asteroid belt. The factories are underground, on the moon, on the outer planets. We learned a long time ago that the best defense is letting your enemy underestimate you. Valeth understood now. The humans had been playing a different game. While the Velthari ruled openly, the humans had prepared quietly. They had built their strength in secret, waiting for the day when conflict became inevitable. He asked another question. The squadron at the outer reach, the 47 ships that destroyed Admiral Nethys' force, was that planned? Cooper's expression did not change. Those ships were on a reconnaissance mission. Their job was to make contact with any civilizations we might encounter and assess their strength and intentions. And if we had responded peacefully, then we would have worked toward friendship, trade agreements, cultural exchange, the things that civilized species do when they meet. But we attacked. Cooper nodded. Yes, you attacked without provocation. You made clear that the Velthari Empire considered all other species to be inferior, to be conquered or destroyed. The Admiral leaned forward slightly. We hoped for peace. We prepared for war. When you showed us who you were, we responded accordingly. Valeth sat in silence for a long moment. 12,000 years. His empire had ruled for 12,000 years. And in one day, it was gone. In the months that followed, the Velthari Empire collapsed completely. Without their military, they could not maintain control over conquered worlds. Species that had been oppressed for millennia saw their chance and took it. Rebellions spread across the galaxy. Governors fled. Administrators surrendered to local populations. The humans did not conquer Velthari space. They had no interest in ruling an empire. Instead, they offered something else. Partnership. The United Terran Coalition established embassies on dozens of worlds. Human engineers helped rebuild shattered infrastructure. Human diplomats mediated disputes between newly freed species. Human ships patrolled trade lanes, ensuring peace through presence rather than intimidation. Captain Katie Morrison was promoted to Rear Admiral. She was given command of the diplomatic task force sent to formally dissolve the Velthari Empire and establish a new galactic government. The work was slow and difficult. Centuries of hatred and fear could not be erased in months. But progress was made. A galactic assembly was proposed. A council where all species would have a voice. Where disputes would be settled through discussion, not war. Where cooperation would replace conquest. The first session of the assembly was held on a neutral station built specifically for the purpose. Delegates from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Hall. Many had never met each other before. All of them had been subjects of the Velthari Empire. All of them were now free. Admiral Morrison addressed the assembly on behalf of humanity. She spoke simply and clearly, without arrogance or threats. She said that humans had not come to the stars to conquer. They had come to explore, to learn, to meet other species and discover what they could teach each other. She said that the destruction of the Velthari fleet had been necessary, but not desired. The humans had defended themselves. Nothing more. They took no pleasure in the deaths of so many. They mourned for all who had been lost. A delegate from the Corton species approached her after the speech. He was a tall alien with gray skin and large dark eyes. He had served in the Velthari military once, before his species was conquered. He understood war. He had a question. The fleet that defeated the Empire. 12,000 ships. Was that the full strength of humanity's military? Morrison smiled slightly. The fleet at Earth represented our active defense force, she said. The ships we keep ready for immediate deployment. But there was more? Morrison nodded. Reserves, colonial defense units, system patrol groups, training squadrons. The shipyards never stopped building. The delegate's eyes widened. How many ships? He asked. How many do you have in total? Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then she answered that the 12,000 ships the Emperor faced were approximately 15% of our total naval capacity. The delegate went pale. Other aliens nearby who had overheard the conversation looked at Morrison with new eyes. 15%. That meant humanity's full military strength was somewhere around 80,000 warships. As many as the Velthari had built in 12,000 years. Morrison continued speaking. Her voice was gentle but firm. We do not want war, she said. We never did. But we learned long ago that peace must be protected. Humanity will be a friend to any species that desires friendship. We will be fair trading partners and honest allies. She paused. But if anyone threatens our people or our friends again, they should understand what they are facing. The Empire ruled through terror for 12,000 years. That era is over. A new age is beginning. One built on cooperation rather than conquest. She looked out at the assembled delegates. Hundreds of species. Thousands of individuals. All watching her with a mixture of fear and hope. We are not here to rule the galaxy, she said. We are here to make sure no one else does either. The Galactic Assembly ratified its founding charter 3 days later. Humanity took its place among the stars. Not as conquerors, but as guardians. Not as rulers, but as partners. And somewhere, in the depths of space, the shipyards of Earth continued their work. Building vessels of war and vessels of peace. Ensuring that humanity would never face extinction unprepared again. The galaxy had changed. The old order was gone. And in its place, something new was growing. Something that might, with time and effort, become something worth protecting. Admiral Cooper retired from military service 2 years after the Battle of Earth. He spent his remaining years teaching at the Coalition Academy, training the next generation of officers. He often told his students the same thing. We fight so that others do not have to. We prepare for war so that peace becomes possible. And we never ever let our guard down. His students remembered those words. They passed them on to their own students. And humanity continued its watch among the stars, patient and prepared. Hoping for the best but always ready for the worst. The galaxy had learned a lesson that day at Earth. A lesson that would echo through history for thousands of years. Never underestimate humanity.